Growing up in East Tennessee, the Great Smoky Mountains were an integral part of my childhood. My family owned numerous rental properties and cabins in and around Townsend, creating a haven for us during holidays. Our extended family would converge in these cabins, nestled in the embrace of the Smokies, creating lasting memories. As a kid, I had my fair share of peculiar experiences, the eerie sensation of being watched while playing in the woods with my brothers and cousins, or the unsettling human-like sounds echoing in the stillness of the night. Minor occurrences like objects falling off tables or unexplained bumps in the night became part of the cabin ambience. However, nothing had ever truly terrified me until that one Christmas around 2010. For that holiday, my twin brother and I were granted a cabin to ourselves, just a short distance from the rest of our family's cabins and my grandparents' main cabin. We were both 19 at the time, no longer kids but not quite seasoned adults either. The first night was uneventful, a bit of drinking, and I ended up crashing on the couch downstairs while my brother took the loft bedroom. It was the second night that would etch itself into my memory. I was now the one upstairs, lying in bed in the pitch darkness. A subtle paranoia initially crept over me, the typical feeling of being watched. Yet, this time, it intensified to a point where it bordered on full-blown panic. Trying to dismiss it as mere cowardice, I remained wide awake, scanning the cabin for any sign of what might be causing this unease. Movement flickered at the corner of my eye, and then, as if a switch had been flipped, an unsettling silence enveloped the cabin. It was the kind of silence that some describe as the Oz effect. Heart pounding, I strained my senses, and that's when I heard it, a raspy, drawn-out whisper right next to my ear. The words were unintelligible, yet the tone was loud, as if someone were leaning over the bed, speaking directly into my ear. In sheer terror, I leaped out of bed and retreated downstairs. Fearful and confused, I ended up falling asleep on the floor beside my brother on the couch. The next morning, my brother, seemingly surprised to find me there, didn't press for an explanation. It wasn't until later, around Halloween the following year, that the strange encounter would resurface in our conversations. Casually discussing strange experiences with family and friends, my brother unexpectedly chimed in, expressing his belief that our grandparents' cabins in the Smokies were haunted. He recounted the same feelings of being watched, the panic, and the unexplainable dread. Excitement bubbled within me as I blurted out my own eerily similar encounter, and that's when my brother connected the dots, realizing the reason for my presence on the couch that mysterious night. Despite my embarrassment, I confided in him, sharing that to this day, the events in those cabins remain an enigma. The cabins were eventually sold, and we haven't returned since. My personal theory leans towards the energy of the mountains and the lingering spirits of the Native Americans who once inhabited the land. I believe that whatever spoke to me that night was undeniably malevolent, leaving an indelible mark on my perception of the Smokies. When I was 17, I found myself entangled in a tumultuous relationship with a guy who, at first, seemed like the love of my life. Little did I know, he was a 27-year-old dropout with a penchant for deceit and a penchant for leading me down a perilous path. My parents, sensing trouble, warned me about his true nature, labeling him a loser and a bum. But in the throes of infatuation, their warnings fell on deaf ears. Our ill-fated connection began at a party, introduced by mutual friends. He convinced me to run away from home, insisting that my parents couldn't comprehend the depth of our love. Despite being a high school student, I succumbed to his sweet words, and we embarked on a 3-week journey of homelessness. The grim reality of sleeping rough and scrounging for sustenance set in, and the little money I had quickly vanished under his influence. Amidst the struggles, he promised refuge in a cabin near the edge of the woods, claiming he had a history with the owner. Desperate for shelter, I agreed, and after a 4-hour trek, we arrived at the cabin. The catch? No key. According to him, it had been left hidden for us, but after hours of futile searching, doubts crept in. Frustrated, I decided to inspect the cabin myself and, miraculously, found an open window on the upper floor. Propelling myself through, I unlocked the door, discovering there were 2 locks, casting doubt on my boyfriend's story. We spent blissful days in the cabin, seemingly the only sanctuary in our chaotic existence. However, my peace shattered when a fancy car pulled into the driveway. For individuals, aged 25 to 30, claimed to have the rightful reservation keys from the owner himself. Panic set in as I tried to defend our occupancy, weaving a tale about my boyfriend and an assumed mix-up in reservations. As tension rose, I heard laughter approaching. My boyfriend and his homeless companions emerged, unaware of the impending confrontation. Seeing the car, he inquired innocently, but my heart sank as I caught the truth in his eyes. I had unwittingly broken into someone else's cabin, and guilt consumed me. Attempting to salvage the situation, I suggested there might be another cabin assigned to us. His nonchalant agreement masked a growing arrogance. When he, accompanied by his buddies, slapped me with a harsh reality check, my world crumbled. The facade of love shattered, replaced by humiliation and abuse. I stumbled back to the cabin, soaked and broken, and sought refuge with the strangers who had rightfully reserved it. Bearing my soul, I confessed my ill-fated escapade, and, luckily, the compassionate girlfriend provided a ride home. Only 40 minutes away, I realized how fortunate I was to escape the clutches of my manipulative ex-boyfriend. Reuniting with my parents, I learned a valuable lesson about choosing the right company. Despite never encountering him again, I stumbled upon his mugshot in local papers, a testament to a life spiraling into criminality. The narrow escape from that toxic relationship marked a turning point, propelling my life onto a more positive trajectory. Back in the crisp October of 1989, my mother and I embarked on a picturesque journey to the western part of North Carolina. Our mission? To witness the magical transformation of leaves, as they danced through the spectrum of autumn hues. A quaint cabin, nestled in the wilderness, became our haven for the week. Interestingly, it was owned by the cousin of my brother's former high school band teacher, a retiree who seemed to be keeping a watchful eye on the place. As Friday unfolded, we found ourselves in the heart of an uneventful sojourn, the cabin standing as a silent witness to the changing foliage. Friday evening led us down the road to a church dinner, a charming community affair that left us with warm memories. However, as we returned home under the shroud of darkness, a subtle unease crept into our thoughts. The isolation of our cabin, with an unfamiliar neighborhood and the absence of discernible neighbors, unsettled my mother. The moon, though not full, cast a gentle glow upon the surroundings. Each room in the cabin became our private sanctuary, and the power outage that greeted our return heightened our vulnerability. It was during this blackout that my mother's acute senses picked up on something unsettling, footsteps echoing in the darkness. She glimpsed an enigmatic figure, adorned with what seemed to be the silhouette of a hat, meandering near the cabin. The specter of this mysterious figure vanished into the woods, leaving us to grapple with the fear that it might return. A paranoid whisper lingered in the air. Had this figure tampered with our power source? Fearing for our safety, I decided to share my mother's room, seeking solace in proximity. Attempts at sleep were thwarted by the hooting of an owl, a relentless nocturnal companion. The power outage persisted, and the owl, with penetrating eyes fixated on my mother through the partially closed drapes, became an unnerving presence. Every creak, rustle, or distant sound morphed into a potential threat, jolting us awake. The night wore on, punctuated by the occasional appearance of the hat-adorned figure. Our imaginations ran wild, conjuring scenarios of imminent danger. With no means of communication and no knowledge of our surroundings, the cabin transformed into a fortress of uncertainty. Finally, in the eerie hours of the morning, the power was restored, or so it seemed. The break of dawn, a beacon of safety, prompted an immediate decision. We would abandon our planned Sunday departure and escape the cabin's mysterious clutches as soon as the sun painted the sky on Saturday morning. Days later, a call from the band director unraveled the enigma. The mysterious figure, the hat-donning phantom, was none other than a harmless mountain man, a local handyman attempting to restore our power. A revelation that, had it been known earlier, would have spared us from a night of terror. Laughter ensued as we reflected on our irrational fears, turning that unforgettable night into a tale worth retelling. In the hazy recesses of my high school years, there exists a singular summer camp experience that still lingers in the corridors of my memory. It was the year I encountered the enigmatic Rebecca, a girl who exuded an air of tough confidence, a touch of edginess that commanded respect. Fate had cast us together in the same cabin, alongside a mutual friend, creating the backdrop for a tale that would leave an indelible mark on my psyche. Rebecca, despite her outward resilience, harbored a secret vulnerability. I discovered this on a stormy night that would forever etch itself into the narrative of our shared history. The elements conspired against us as a tempest, accompanied by a tornado warning, sent us scurrying from the dining hall to the refuge of our cabins. Raindrops lashed at us like tiny, stinging daggers, and thunder rolled in the distance, the wind possessing an otherworldly force that threatened to sweep me away. The night seemed to unfold in the typical manner as we settled into our bunks, the ambient sounds of the storm outside creating a symphony of nature's fury. Little did I know that the tranquil facade of the night would be shattered by a sudden cry and the abrupt extinguishing of the cabin lights. Fear gripped me as the darkness enveloped the room, and a torrent of thoughts flooded my mind, visions of my family succumbing to the same storm, an inexplicable dread that clawed at my insides. As the night wore on, we were roused from our uneasy slumber by the haunting sound of someone crying. Panic hung in the air like an oppressive fog, and the storm outside seemed to amplify the unease that had settled within our cabin walls. The lights flickered back on, revealing a shaken Rebecca. In a hushed voice, she began to recount the horrors that had unfolded in the shadows of her nightmares. In the darkness, she had witnessed a malevolent figure, its form consuming the corner of the cabin. Its head brushed against the ceiling, an abyss of complete darkness save for two malevolent, glowing red eyes that pierced the night. The mere thought of it sent shivers down my spine. But the terror didn't end there. In her distorted vision, the two counselors, real people who had sought to console her, took on grotesque, demonic forms. One, a petite girl with flowing hair, was suspended lifelessly from the bunk opposite hers. The other counselor, who in reality had a single head, now sported a sinister duality, two smiling faces that seemed to revel in some perverse delight. As a young teen, the paranormal had been an abstract concept, distant and unrelated to my reality. Yet, that fateful night shattered the illusions of the mundane. Rebecca's account resonated with an authenticity that left no room for skepticism. A girl of unwavering resolve, she had been reduced to tears by an encounter with entities that transcended the boundaries of the natural world. In the morning light, Rebecca sought to rationalize the inexplicable, attributing the grotesque figures to demons and, chillingly, even suggesting the presence of Satan himself in that shadowy corner. The weight of that revelation lingered, casting a spectral pall over the remainder of our time at the camp and leaving an enduring imprint on my understanding of the mysterious and the unknown. In the sweltering summer of 2021, my family and I retreated to our rustic cabin nestled in the heart of southern Manitoba, Canada. The vast expanse of our property, spanning 80 acres, was predominantly cloaked in dense woods, offering a serene escape from the hustle and bustle of everyday life. It was a lazy afternoon, and the cabin reverberated with the soothing symphony of familial snoring, courtesy of the midday naps being enjoyed by everyone but my mother and me. While she toiled away in the field, I found myself in the clutches of boredom, a relentless companion that prodded me to venture into the wilderness that we called our own. Embarking on an overgrown trail that meandered through the woods, I reveled in the solitude and the whispers of the rustling leaves. The day, thus far, had been uneventful, but little did I know that an unexpected and bone-chilling encounter awaited me. Suddenly, a putrid stench wafted through the air, assaulting my senses with the unmistakable odor of death and mold. My initial thought was that some unfortunate creature had met its demise nearby. Determined to investigate, I veered off the path, eyes scanning the surroundings for the source of the foul scent. My curiosity, however, morphed into an unsettling apprehension when a familiar voice pierced the stillness of the woods. It was the voice of my baby brother, beckoning me to follow him from the depths of the forest. Panic seized me as the realization dawned that he shouldn't have been awake, let alone wandering alone in the woods. I hastened my pace, desperate to locate him and bring him back to safety. Yet, as I approached the source of the voice, a disconcerting revelation gripped my soul. The voice wasn't quite right. It echoed with an eerie undertone, and doubts crept into my mind. The woods seemed to come alive with an unsettling symphony, the hushed movements of something colossal brushing through the underbrush. This was no ordinary encounter. With my heart pounding in my chest, I continued my pursuit, the ominous sounds growing louder and more menacing. It was then that reason overcame panic, and I abruptly stopped in my tracks. My brother's voice echoed again, closer this time, but my instincts screamed at me to turn back. Whatever lurked in those woods was not what it claimed to be. Fueled by a primal fear, I sprinted back through the labyrinth of trees, the unseen presence dogging my every step. I dared not look back, afraid that a single glance might confirm the unimaginable. The cacophony of pursuit persisted until I burst forth from the oppressive cover of the woods into the clearing surrounding our cabin. Relief washed over me as the sound subsided. Gasping for breath, I dared to look back, half expecting some spectral entity to emerge from the shadows. But the woods stood silent, concealing the secrets of that harrowing afternoon. Returning to the cabin, I found my baby brother peacefully asleep, oblivious to the terror that had unfolded in his name. It became abundantly clear that whatever had beckoned me from the depths of the forest was not human. For days, the memory haunted me, and a pervasive fear prevented me from venturing into those woods. In the aftermath of that surreal encounter, I learned a lesson that reverberates through the very core of my being. To all those who cherish the great outdoors, beware the siren call of strange voices in the woods. There are things that dwell in the shadows, things that defy understanding, and to heed their call may lead to a fear that lingers long after the echoes have faded.